Hey everyone, and welcome to the Cinematic Explainer. I'm your host, Dr. Chem, and today we're setting the stage for a true masterclass on the absolute logic behind chemical reactions. We're going to explore the systematic methods for balancing chemical equations using the totally unbreakable rules of atomic conservation. Look, whether you're dealing with a simple everyday combustion or a wildly complex redox reaction, just winging it and guessing, that's just not going to cut it. So let's dive right in. So, can you create or destroy matter? I mean, it kind of sounds like a philosophical puzzle, right? But in the realm of science, this question is literally the high-stakes foundation of all chemistry. And the definitive answer is absolutely not. No way. If your chemical equation suggests that atoms are just magically popping into or out of existence, well, every single subsequent calculation you make, from limiting reactants to theoretical yield, is going to be completely wrong. All right, moving into section 1. The ledger of the universe. The law of conservation of mass. To really grasp why this is so critical, we need to think of chemistry as more than just bubbling beakers in a lab. It's actually like a strict financial ledger, where every single atomic penny must be accounted for. And here is the core law we live by, the law of conservation of mass. Because we aren't dealing with nuclear reactions here, the chemical elements pass through the reaction entirely unchanged. What that means is every single atom present at the start of the reaction absolutely must be present at the end. They're simply rearranged, like atomic Lego blocks, to form new compounds with totally new properties. Let's break down the actual anatomy of a chemical equation. On the left side, we've got our reactants, basically the starting materials or ingredients. Over on the right side, we have our products, the newly formed substances. And right in the middle, separating them, is an arrow. Think of that arrow as the transaction line, showing the direction of the chemical change. Our one job here, ensure that the number of atoms for each element on the reactant side is exactly, perfectly equal to the product side. Now, bouncing randomly back and forth between reactants and products is a recipe for total disaster. That brings us to section 2, the playbook, specifically the MINO inspection method. Let's look at how this completely eliminates trial and error. The MINO method is fantastic because it gives us a foolproof hierarchy. It tells us exactly which elements to attack first. You start with the metals, then you move to intact polyatomic ions. After that, hit the other nonmetals, things like sulfur or chlorine. Finally, you balance oxygen, and you save hydrogen for the absolute last. Why this highly specific chronological order? Well, elements like hydrogen and oxygen tend to show up in multiple compounds across the whole equation. If you start with them, you are literally just going to end up chasing your own tail. But look, even with a great playbook, things can absolutely still go sideways. Welcome to section 3, the 5 deadly sins, common errors in balancing equations. These are the classic pitfalls that both students and seasoned professionals fall into, drawn directly from expert educators. Let's make sure you don't make them. Sin number 1, changing the subscripts instead of the coefficients. Okay, the crucial point here is this. If you have H2O and you need 2 oxygen atoms to balance out the equation, you cannot, under any circumstances, just slap a little 2 on the end to make it H2O2. You haven't balanced water. You've just created hydrogen peroxide. You must always, always use coefficients, those large numbers placed in front of the molecules, because they multiply the entire formula without ruining its actual chemical identity. Moving on, sins 2 and 3 basically boil down to sloppy accounting. First up, failing to make a rigorous written list of the elements on both sides. If you just look at a reaction and eyeball it, guessing that it's balanced without actually counting, you're going to make a mistake. Second, forgetting that a coefficient multiplies the entire formula. If you put a 2 in front of H2O, you don't just magically have 2 oxygen atoms. You also have 4 hydrogen atoms. That coefficient is a multiplier for the whole shebang. Sin 4 goes right back to what we just talked about with the MINO method, trying to balance hydrogen or oxygen first. Take a combustion reaction, for example. Oxygen is literally everywhere. If you try to balance it right out of the gate, you're going to trigger the super frustrating chain reaction of endless tiny adjustments. Do yourself a favor and save these messy elements for the very end, when the rest of the molecule is basically locked into place. And finally, sin 5, walking away way too soon. You place your coefficients, things look pretty good, and you pack up your notes. Nope. A true chemist always does one final, rigorous recounts of the ledger. You have to check every single atom on both sides. If those totals don't match perfectly, your equation isn't balanced, and quite frankly, all your math going forward is going to fail.
Just look at the visual difference between the raw, unbalanced mess on the left and the beautiful mathematical order on the right. Check out equation number 9. 2C8H18 plus 25O2 yields 16CO2 plus 18H2O. I mean, this proves the incredible power of using systematic coefficients. Imagine trying to just guess the number 25 for oxygen. Yeah, right. That's exactly why we rely on this system.
But hey, what happens when that simple inspection method just isn't enough? That brings us to section 4, leveling up, tackling complex redox reactions. See, in aqueous solutions, these oxidation-reduction reactions can become insanely complicated. If you try simple inspection here, you're just going to be staring at a blank piece of paper for hours. To balance these beasts, we first have to totally understand the flow of electrons. Oxidation is the process of losing electrons, which, counterintuitively, actually increases the oxidation state. Reduction is gaining those electrons, which decreases the oxidation state. So to balance difficult redox equations, we use the half reaction method, literally splitting the equation right down the middle into two parts. We balance the atoms, sure, but crucially, we also have to add electrons, hydrogen ions, and water just to ensure the electrical charges balance out perfectly on both sides. Okay, let's slow the pace down for a second for section 5, the ultimate reveal, mathematical chemistry. I want to share a totally mind-bending revelation from a paper published in the Journal of Applied Mathematics by researcher Ihsanullah Hamid. In this paper, Hamid drops this absolute bombshell statement. He says balancing chemical reactions is not chemistry, it is just linear algebra. I mean, let that sink in for a second. This completely shifts the paradigm of what we think a chemical equation actually represents. When we start assigning variables to our reactants and products, we're basically stepping right out of the chemistry lab and walking directly into the mathematics department. And the ultimate heavyweight tool in that mathematics department? Gaussian elimination. This is a highly sophisticated math method used to solve massive systems of linear equations using matrices. By treating a chemical equation purely as a system of linear equations, we can handle absolutely any chemical reaction, no matter how complex or how many bizarre fractional oxidation numbers it might throw at us. And you can actually see this mathematical alchemy happening right here. By assigning unknown variables like x1, x2, x3, and x4 to each chemical species, we build out a matrix. Then, through row operations and that Gaussian elimination we just talked about, we can pinpoint the exact lowest whole number coefficients. It's essentially a foolproof mathematical guarantee that you'll get a balanced result every single time. Which leads us to this incredibly profound mathematical reality that underpins all chemical reactions. From a strict scientific viewpoint, a chemical reaction can only be balanced if and only if it generates a vector space. Simply put, if a reaction is actually feasible out there in the natural world, it's guaranteed to have a non-trivial mathematical solution. So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a thought-provoking question. If every chemical reaction, every physical transformation of matter in the universe is ultimately just a consistent system of linear equations waiting to be solved, where does chemistry end and mathematics begin? Definitely keep that in mind the next time you're looking at a perfectly balanced equation. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm Dr. Kem, and keep exploring the incredible logic of our universe.